Hi there, it's Sarah here from BJC Health, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Thanks for showing an interest in one of our educational events. You're about to watch part one, so enjoy the event. If you've got any questions about the content, then please consider joining BJC Connect, where you can access all of our facilitators live. Otherwise, please consider leaving a comment and we'll do our best to get back to you.
Okay, so we're talking about the nervous system and more so how it can impact energy levels, fatigue. Pain sensitivity is another part that we'll talk about a little bit as well. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of this boom-bust cycle. So I mentioned that in an email that went out to everyone. And unfortunately, this can be quite a common phenomenon or experience that people with rheumatic conditions, but also other chronic conditions, can experience. And I guess it's that, if I was to explain the boom-bust cycle simply, it's that feeling of, having days where you might feel really good and you try and get a lot done in those days because you're like, right, I've got to, clean the house. I want to get my groceries done. I might want to catch up with a friend. I've got some exercise that I've been meaning to do, only to then have, what we'd call a crash, or to then really feel like you're paying for it the next day. And this, although all of us go through that, if we have a big weekend and we're a little bit tired on the Monday, some of that is of course normal, and we can, move on from that and not feel too bad. When the boom bust cycle becomes this sort of long-term chronic thing you're dealing with, it can obviously be really frustrating. It can not only impact how much physical things you can do, but it will also tend to impact your mood, your confidence. So it's really something that we want to avoid being in if possible. And so I've just popped a few examples up on the slide there that you can read through. But again, straight away, if you've experienced this sort of boom bust cycle, would you, if you felt comfortable, pop it in the chat. It doesn't have to be lengthy, and you don't have to share anything you don't feel comfortable sharing. But in your own words, if you've had, episodes where you've done a lot, whatever that means for you, and then you've experienced a bit of a crash in symptoms or a flare in symptoms, that might be another word that some of you resonate with. Please feel free to share, because I think it can be really helpful to know that you're not the only one who's gone through such things. And that's something that I think when you understand your nervous system, we can hopefully build some tools to minimize this happening if possible. And so this is a graph we've had in a few of the talks that we've done on BJC Connect, but it tries to just show if over a long period of time, or a decent length of time, if we're booming and busting and sort of having these highs and lows, gradually we start to notice that you might flare more frequently. You might notice you're flaring, doing things that didn't used to cause you pain and symptoms. And overall, we find that your tissue tolerance, like your capacity to do things, gradually gets less and less. And so again, if we really sort of take that all the way down, again, I'm sure you can appreciate that if you're really not feeling confident in doing much, if you've had to stop doing lots of the things you enjoy, again, you're typically not then going to be enjoying life as much. You might have mood disturbance, or it starts to really get you down. And plus, you're just not able to move as often as you might want to then keep yourself as healthy and as strong as possible. So we really want to avoid this where we can. So that's a little bit about the boom bust. And I guess stemming on from that, so why do we then still think talking about the nervous system is worthwhile? So very simply, if our nervous system is balanced or in harmony, again, there's not one word to, I guess, symbolize that well. But typically, if things are working well when it comes to our nervous system, your energy levels, your capacity to move, your ability to recover, those sorts of processes happen reasonably smoothly. But if the nervous system gets a little bit out of sync, if it's a bit out of balance, if there's a bit too much now, you might be going, what on earth has a squirrel got to do with tonight's talk? Hopefully by the end, you'll know why, and that squirrel will stay in your mind, and not enough sloth time. It can definitely then result in more fatigue and more pain. Okay, so although it's not the only thing that will contribute to your pain and fatigue, it definitely is something to be aware of. And again, part of understanding the nervous system, hopefully you leave tonight and go, okay, there are still things you can control to help your nervous system thrive. So hopefully that sets the scene. So we're going to keep an eye out for this squirrel and sloth. Although I thought I found quite cute squirrel. That's a cute little squirrel and a cute little sloth. I haven't come up with names for them. And I think if anyone wants an extra challenge for tonight and you want to come up with a cool name for the squirrel and a cool name for the sloth, I'd really appreciate that, because I think, again, in a week or 3 months, when you try to remember some of the concepts we go through tonight, I think if you've got a name for the squirrel and a name for the sloth, that will make it a little bit easier for you to make decisions that support your health and well-being. But it's all about having these two, smiling, happy. Neither one is better or worse than the other. We need both of them, but we do need there to be a little bit of balance and harmony for our nervous system to be ticking along well. Okay, so our nervous system. Here's a bit of an overview. So this is sort of the summary, and then we're going to chisel down and spend a little bit more time talking about the autonomic nervous system, which then you look out for the squirrel and the sloth again down the bottom of the slide. But we've got 2 branches. Okay, so think we've got our nervous system, and think the reason we have our nervous system, like think of it as the communication and command center. Okay, the main job of the nervous system is to keep us alive, safe, and well. Okay, that's important. We've got to feel safe, we've got to feel well, and the nervous system is very much trying to make sure that you stay alive. Okay, so the central nervous system is comprised of your spinal cord, your brain, and the brainstem. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about those tonight. It's certainly not my area of expertise, but think of that as the command center. Okay, the brain's responsible for so much, and the brain and the spinal cord working together all the time to help us navigate the outside world and to keep us safe. Okay, but the other branch is the peripheral nervous system. Okay, and this is our body's way of linking and giving us feedback around the outside world, the environment that we're in. And again, if we look at the peripheral nervous system, we've got 2 branches. We've got the somatic nervous system and we've got the autonomic nervous system. And the somatic nervous system, think of that as responsible for things that voluntary actions, things you're in control of. So the somatic nervous system, when I think of that, I think of when we lift our arm, when we push someone away from us. We're asking our body, use my muscle, lift my arm. We can control those movements. It's also responsible for sensations like touch, temperature, pain, all those sensory signals to help us, again, feel safe, get out of the way when we're in danger, and they're voluntary actions. The autonomic nervous system, which I'll spend a little bit more time talking about tonight, and we go into a bit more detail in the next few slides, is more talking to physiological processes that are automatic. These things are happening in the background for all of us here tonight as we sit here. Okay, so the autonomic nervous system can include things like our heart rate, our breathing, digestive system, some of those things that are happening, but we're not always in total control of those processes. We can't sit here and say, okay, stomach, I really want you now to digest my dinner and I want you to do it quickly. It doesn't quite work like that. So that's our autonomic nervous system. And then we've got 2 more branches. So autonomic nervous system, you might have heard things like the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's where I'm going to spend the bulk of tonight talking about, because I think, again, having an appreciation of how those branches work and what are the sorts of environments and what are the sorts of things that stimulate or activate the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system can help you, manage your energy and your day-to-day living that bit better. But hopefully that overview helps. But let's talk a little bit more about the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so it's that branch of the nervous system that works automatically without us having too much conscious control over it. It controls really essential bodily processes like your heart rate response, your breathing rate, again, digestion we've covered, blood pressure, temperature regulation. All of those things are linked to the sympathetic nervous system, to the autonomic nervous system, sorry. And you can appreciate just on the side there, all the different body parts that the nervous system has to talk to and respond to for it to work optimally. And again, like I've mentioned, we've got those 2 branches. So the sympathetic nervous system, you might have heard the term fight or flight. That's going to be something that we, start to think a little bit more when we're talking about the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. The catch cry, or one of the catch cries used to describe that, is rest and digest. Both are important. Both help us stay alive. It's not about having no stress or always being in a very slow, cruisy state. Although that can be helpful, we still need to be able to respond to stress and be able to get ourselves out of mischief if we find ourselves in tricky situations. But the autonomic nervous system plays a really big role in helping us function. Okay. And again, if the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems aren't working so well together, that can really start to impact your pain sensitivity, can impact your sleep, it can impact your state of fatigue. So important to try and have a good sense of how those two work together. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about the squirrel. So the squirrel represents the sympathetic nervous system. Again, remember, if you've got a name for the squirrel by the end, that would be great. So think of the sympathetic nervous system, like your body's accelerator pedal. So we have this system to help us get out of danger. Where the sympathetic nervous system is really helpful is to get us out of trouble. If you're on the street and someone's walking straight towards you and you quickly need to get out of the way, sympathetic nervous system is going to be the one that helps you do that. Okay. And yes, you need to move as well. But it helps us deal with stress. It helps us deal with pain. It helps prepare us to deal with those states that tend to be less pleasant and that our brain perceives as a bit of a threat. Typically, when our sympathetic nervous system is kind of taking the reins and helping us manage things, it will typically result in an increase in your heart rate. It would also coincide with an increase in your breathing rate. And sometimes, especially if you really need to use a lot of energy quickly to get yourself out of danger, the sympathetic nervous system can suppress things like digestion because your brain's trying to sort of say, right now, I need to get out of here. I'm going to power down the physiological processes that I don't really need right now in order to make sure I've got enough energy to, help Sarah get out of the way. So that increase in heart rate, increasing breathing, it also can result in an increase in muscle tension, which again, in certain scenarios, those are all really helpful things. And many of you I know on tonight's call, if you exercise regularly, you'll know that increasing your heart rate, increasing your breathing rate are normal processes that happen when we exercise. So this is where I mean, where it's not about the sympathetic nervous system being bad or we don't want it to work at all. We do, but we've got to try and just have that balance in mind. Okay. Other things about the sympathetic nervous system, it uses a lot of energy. Okay. And again, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail and go through the different energy systems we have, but typically when we're in danger or our brain feels that we're, under threat, it wants to use a lot of energy to help us get out of the way or get out of there, or run for it if we need to. So that's why if this nervous system is, holding the fort or, holding the reins a lot of the time, it takes a lot of energy. So just being in that state is going to add to then your fatigue and add to why you might feel that little more tired, even if you're feeling I'm not doing that much. Okay. It's definitely helpful in short bursts, but if it's switched on too often or in states where we're not necessarily in high amounts of danger, that's where, again, over a long period of time, it can be quite taxing. Okay, but lots of different body parts are involved and we need it. Okay, so it's still very, very helpful and good for us to have. Then on the flip side, so when we think about the parasympathetic nervous system, it's a little more like the body's brake pedal. Again, also very important. We need to be able to recover from different stresses that we all come into contact with in life. It helps us recover and recharge after activity. Again, if the parasympathetic nervous system is holding the reins, typically that will result in a slower heart rate, a slower breathing rate. This tends to be where the body finds it more comfortable to go through digestion. And again, if we have that nice balance, making sure you have activities or spending some time where the parasympathetic nervous system is in control can help lower muscle tension. Again, it's not the only thing we can do to lower muscle tension, but I think, again, when I'm looking at, sort of moderate to longer term things, we want to make sure that the environments we're in, the people we're around, some of the activities we do, it's great to have a mix. Okay, because again, it can impact lots and lots of different parts of our body and a number of different physiological processes. So yes, parasympathetic nervous system can support digestion, healing. So again, if you're regularly exercising and you're wanting to get stronger, there's going to be times after a session that you might feel a little bit sore. I'm sure some of you experienced that sort of delayed onset muscle soreness where you're like, gosh, I pushed that session a bit. And that's great because that's important to help you get stronger. But part of letting the body do its thing in the best possible way is also then allowing time for that healing of the muscle. And so we can't always be go, go, go all the time. The parasympathetic nervous system, again, if it's utilized well, and again, we have some different activities and time in our days and weeks where it's in control, that helps us build energy over time. Not in the short term, but as a long-term strategy, it can be very, very helpful. Okay, so I think that's an important thing to consider as well. So I think squirrels representing sympathetic nervous system, sloth is representing parasympathetic nervous system, but I don't want you to think of the sloth as like being lazy. It's not being lazy. It's not necessarily doing nothing, although nothing wrong with doing nothing, by the way. It's definitely one of the things you can do to help activate the parasympathetic nervous system, but it's not so black and white. So I've got some examples later to cover. So before I pause for questions or comments, and Robyn might want to chime in a little, I think this can occur. It's not a guarantee. So I don't want you to think that, if you've been diagnosed with a condition, that automatically means your sympathetic nervous system is overactive. But I think, again, it's something that can happen over time. And definitely if you're juggling a number of conditions, or it's been hard for you to stabilize the chronic condition that you might have been diagnosed with, obviously that comes with some anxiety and some concern about your future. And if you've had difficulty getting control of your symptoms, if you've been in pain for a while, all of those things can just make that sympathetic nervous system a little more vigilant, a little more overactive. And if that's the case, I've just written some comments there. And again, you might resonate with that or feel that that might have happened to yourself or someone that you care about. Over a long period of time, if that sympathetic nervous system is more active, hypervigilant, just taking the reins a little too much, it can impact your hormones, it can increase muscle tension, it can just mean your fatigue levels are harder to control. So you've got to think your system is just spending more energy just trying to get through the day. Okay, so it can impact your levels of pain, it can make you more sensitive to pain, and then it can just then impact your ability to recover from the things that you do, whether it's an exercise session or a social gathering or a hard day at work. Potentially those things can become a little harder to recover from, and just mean that you're having those crashes more often, or they're lasting for longer, which can just make it hard for you to maintain a good routine. And so on the flip side, then, the parasympathetic nervous system, if it's not being, tended to, it can just mean that it's a little harder to recover. You might find that if you exercise and just push it a little bit more, it just takes a lot longer for you to recover. So some of those things, again, that there are always potentially other reasons for symptoms to flare, and there can be other reasons why, you might feel a lot of discomfort after an exercise session. But I think there is an element that can also be attributed to the nervous system, and just having, again, that understanding and having some tools to help you manage that, I think can be helpful. But I'll pause there for a bit. Robyn, do you have anything to add? Have I missed the memo? Is there anything else that you wanted to add just from your experience, or anything else you want to bring to what I've mentioned so far?
Sarah, I think you've hit the mark, at least from my perspective. And I think you really made the point of just striking the right balance between the sympathetic nervous system being activated and the parasympathetic nervous system. And it's, not one or the other. I'm interested to hear the art of how we do that in your coming slides. I think one thing I can add is a lot of you might have heard about the, I guess you can call it a trendy hormone, cortisol, which, can be a lot in the news, or you're hearing health practitioners talk about it. But when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, cortisol, is released. And it does that in a way to conserve energy, right? Because that sympathetic nervous system is switched on. It's trying to conserve energy during a crisis. But we know that that can actually suppress the immune system. And so if you think about that sympathetic nervous system being activated continuously long-term, that's not going to be very good for our immune system. And then that can result in long-term inflammation or recurrent inflammation and other negative health benefits. So just thought I'd mention the C word, or the cortisol, because it does play a role when we're talking about stress and the effects on our health.
Beautiful. Okay, we will continue. So again, I guess the squirrel and sloth, to reiterate, both are good. Both are very helpful to help us stay alive and stay well, but we do want some harmony and some balance between them. Okay, so I'll go into a little bit more about how we might do that next. So here are some examples. And again, hopefully now with a little bit more understanding. If you've got your own examples that aren't on this list, again, please share them. It is not by any means an exhaustive list. And again, it depends on each of us as well. For some of us, going for a walk in nature might feel really calming and lovely. But for others at this point in time, that might not feel like a really relaxing thing to do. So the things on this list, are tending to be environments or situations where your sympathetic nervous system is more likely to kick into gear. So like I said, exercise. We know exercise is a stress. Typically, we label it as a good stress because we know there's lots of benefits related to exercise. But really intense exercise in particular, definitely sympathetic nervous system is going to be in charge there. But even in smaller examples like rushing to catch a train, or, if you find you've slept in one morning and then you really got to push it to get out the door on time, those are going to be where your sympathetic nervous system is going to be helping you get that done. Rushing to catch the bus, racing across the road to get the green light, lifting heavy things. The next line is really important because it's not just physical situations that we need to be mindful of. So although I've labeled these stressful situations, again, this list is not exhaustive. Running late, being stuck in traffic. I've got a good example. I hope my sister doesn't mind me sharing this, but the poor thing a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if any of you have had this experience where you just get lost in the Sydney tunnels and you don't know where you are and you're getting beeped for so many tolls. And she just never ended up getting to where she wanted to get to. It was very stressful, not very fun. So traffic or being in a rush or not feeling in control of your situation can be other examples. Difficult conversations, emotionally charged conversations, and this can be in a workplace, this could be in your home life, but conversations of a difficult nature can be difficult. And again, your system needs energy and different hormones to help you navigate those scenarios. So I think that's important to be mindful of. Pain. So again, if you're in acute flare, but sudden pain, being, doing a movement that suddenly hurts when it wouldn't normally hurt, that's another example. Strong emotions is another one. So although I think with one of the catch cries or labels for the sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight. So think if you're having an argument, if there's yelling, if you're feeling really angry, if you're feeling really anxious, but even excitement. So I think this is where, again, remember, it's not all just some of those more negative emotions. It can be excitement. It can be just feeling really joyful about something. That, again, can still require a bit more energy and a bit more of that sympathetic nervous system to help you navigate that. Stimulants such as caffeine, nicotine, some medications can impact the nervous system. Sleep is a big one. So again, over a long period of time, if you're not able to sleep as much as you would like, or your sleep's very disrupted for whatever reason, that can also contribute to your body starting to feel like it's in danger because it's just not rested enough. It's not being able to recover. It's not being able to do all the different processes that happen when we sleep. And that can start to also keep that sympathetic nervous system a little more vigilant than what we would like it to be. But I think the bottom line is also important. It's loud noises, sudden surprises, positive or negative, being startled, the radio coming on in your car when you're not expecting it. Just all of those. I think they're examples of scenarios or activities where the sympathetic nervous system might be a little bit more in control. But please, if you've got others that you could think of, please pop them down.
So you've just finished watching part 1 of one of our recent educational events. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you'd like to access part 2, then you need to sign up for BJC Connect. It's a free platform where you can access not just the recordings of past events, but also access a whole range of upcoming future events and access our team of facilitators live. All of the details that you need to join BJC Connect are now flashing up on your screen. But otherwise, like our staff, subscribe if you'd like to see more information from BJC Health. Look forward to seeing you in an event soon.